The bull was chained to rusty metal, until a limping farmer broke every lock. The morning fog hung like a ghost over Dry Hollow, curling around fence posts and settling heavy in the fields. The town barely stirred. A few lights flickered in windows, but the roads remained quiet, like even the wind had stopped to mourn whatever used to live here. Time had drained the life from this place. One boarded-up feed store, one closed schoolhouse, one dead field at a time. On the edge of town, past a crooked wooden sign that once read, "Welcome to Dry Hollow, home of champions," a broken wire fence leaned toward the earth. Behind it, in a patch of cracked mud and overgrown weeds, stood a bull, tethered by a thick, rust-flecked chain looped around a metal stake sunk deep into the ground. The bull barely moved. Its body was scarred, skin stretched tight over sunken ribs. One horn was chipped and dull. Flies buzzed around its eyes, which stared not at the world, but through it, as if the creature had long since stopped hoping anyone would come. From the town diner to the grain silo, locals had plenty to say. "Meanest animal I ever seen. Killed a ranch hand once, stomped him straight into the soil. Should have been put down years ago." But no one came near it. Then, a sound. Soft, metal tapping against gravel. Garrett Blake limped slowly across the yard, leaning hard into a steel cane. His boots dragged through the dew-wet weeds. He wore an old canvas coat, frayed at the cuffs, and a hat so sun-bleached it barely had color left. His frame was still broad under the layers, but bent now, by age, grief, and the accident that had taken his walk and much more. He stopped at the fence, wheezing from the short walk. A crow landed on a fence post beside him, cawed once, then flew off as if even it didn't want to stay. Garrett's eyes landed on the bull. At first he said nothing, just stared. The bull didn't move. The wind whispered through brittle stalks. Then Garrett whispered to no one in particular, "You're still here, huh?" His voice cracked like dry wood. He stepped closer, hand gripping the fence. The bull lifted its head an inch. Its chain clinked, just once, against the metal loop. Garrett winced at the sound, not from fear, but recognition. He remembered that sound. He'd heard it once before, different bull, different chain. Years ago, when his son Wade had roped a prize beast too proud to be tied. It took 3 men to wrestle the thing into a trailer. Wade had done it alone, and he'd paid the price. That bull was dead now. So was Wade. But this one hadn't moved on. And neither, Garrett realized, had he. He let out a breath, rough and shallow. Behind him, the barn stood like a broken memory. Its roof sagged, a rusted weather vane spun in lazy circles above. Inside, tools collected dust, fences went unrepaired, and a photo of a boy in rodeo gear lay face down beneath a shattered glass frame. Garrett hadn't touched the barn in years. Not since the funeral. Not since the day his knee shattered under the weight of a falling beam, right after the burial, as if the land itself had turned against him. But that morning, something pulled at him. Not the kind of pull you feel in muscle or bone. This was deeper. The bull turned its head, slowly, like it took effort. Their eyes met. In that brief, breathless second, Garrett didn't see an animal. He saw a reflection. A creature left behind. Once powerful, now discarded. Feared. Forgotten. He took another step closer. The chain creaked again. From the road, an old pickup rumbled by, kicking up dust. The driver, a young ranch hand from the Cooley farm, slowed for a moment, saw Garrett standing there and shook his head. "Old fool still thinks he can fix something," the look said. Garrett didn't notice, or didn't care. He rested both hands on the fence and watched the bull twitch its ears. The chain dug into the beast's neck like a collar meant for punishment, not restraint. He saw scabs beneath the hide, old wounds, the kind that don't bleed anymore, but never stop aching. Garrett pulled off his hat and pressed it to his chest. "You ain't mean," he whispered. "You're just hurt." The bull didn't react, but something in Garrett's voice had changed. The fear was gone. He stayed there until the sun crept above the trees, until the fog began to lift, and the birds started singing like they always did, whether men were watching or not. Finally, Garrett turned and limped back toward the barn. Each step felt heavier than the last. But as he reached the door, he looked back. The bull had taken a single step closer to the edge of the pen. Just one. Garrett stared for a long moment, then nodded to himself. "Tomorrow," he said quietly. "We'll try again tomorrow." He slipped into the barn's shadows, leaving the gate creaking gently in the wind, and the bull, still chained, still scarred, standing closer to the fence than it had in years. Not free. Not yet. But something had changed. Something had begun. Mornings came slowly in Dry Hollow, like a sleepy breath in a body too tired to rise. But Garrett Blake was up before the sun now. Not for chores, those days were long behind him, but for something older, something wordless, something waiting. His boots crunched the frost-laced grass as he crossed the field, breath curling in front of him in the cold dawn light. The cane tapped its rhythm beside him, tap, drag, step, like an old waltz only he remembered how to dance. At the edge of the pen, the bull stood just as it had yesterday, and the day before. Still, silent, staring. Garrett reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an apple, red, bruised, and soft on one side. He tossed it gently over the fence. It landed near the bull's hooves. The bull didn't move, didn't even blink. "Suit yourself," Garrett muttered. He shifted, groaned, and sat on an overturned bucket beside the fence. His bones ached from the cold, but he didn't complain, just watched the bull. They stayed like that for an hour, two figures carved from time, both too stubborn to look away. The next day, he brought 2 apples. The day after, 3. Still, the bull never touched them. But it noticed. Its ears twitched when Garrett spoke. Its head lifted a little sooner each time he approached. Once, its tail swayed, just once, but Garrett caught it. And he smiled. He started talking then. Not loud. Not to make a point. Just talking. "You know, my son used to swear by these Fuji apples," Garrett said one morning, placing the fruit carefully on the dirt. "Said Granny Smith's were too sour. I used to argue with him just to hear him get riled." The bull didn't respond. Garrett adjusted his hat against the sun and squinted. "Boy had hands like leather. Could rope a calf before I even had my gloves on. Fast. Too fast, maybe." His voice caught a little. They said the bull he rode that day wasn't ready, that it hadn't been broken. But Wade didn't care. He just wanted to prove something. He swallowed, looked at the animal in front of him. "You ever try to prove something?" The bull blinked slowly. Its chain shifted, ever so slightly. Over the next week, Garrett talked more. Stories, memories, confessions. "Doctor told me I'd never walk right again after the barn caved. Guess I didn't listen. Just like Wade didn't listen to me." He shifted on the bucket. The bull stepped forward, just an inch. "I thought if I stayed away from this place, from the land, from the animals, I could bury the past. But the land's got a memory, same as scars." He leaned forward, lowering his voice to a whisper. "You and me, we're both just wearing ours on the outside." That day, the bull finally nudged an apple with its nose. Didn't eat it, but didn't ignore it either. Garrett didn't say a word. He just smiled and looked up at the sky. Later that week, Garrett approached the pasture's outer gate, the one that hadn't been touched in years. A heavy chain wound around it like a warning. A rusted padlock clung to it, its metal body orange with decay. Garrett stood there for a long while. Then, without a word, he pulled a key from his coat pocket. It was old, worn smooth. He slid it into the padlock. It took 2 tries, but the lock gave way with a groan. The gate creaked open. He didn't enter, didn't push farther, just let the gate be open. That same afternoon, a black and white patrol truck rolled up the dirt road and stopped nearby. Sheriff Donnelly stepped out, chewing the last of a sandwich. He spotted Garrett near the fence and walked over, boots crunching gravel. "You're stirring up dust, Garrett," he said. "That bull's still county property, you know." Garrett didn't look at him. "He ain't property. He's forgotten." Sheriff Donnelly folded his arms. "You open that gate again, and you're gonna have problems. That animal's a liability. If it hurts someone—" "I'll take responsibility," Garrett said. The sheriff studied him, hard. "That bull ever snaps, it won't be a slow thing. You try anything stupid, and I'll have no choice. I'll put it down." Garrett finally turned to him. His voice was quiet. "Ain't nothing stupid about mercy." The 2 men stared at each other. Years of history passed silently between them. Then Donnelly tipped his hat back and walked away. "I mean it, Garrett. Don't test me." Garrett said nothing. But that night, as the wind picked up and the fields rustled under the stars, something new stirred inside the pen. The bull had started pacing. Not wild, not angry, just movement. Each step tugged softly against the chain, testing its limits. Garrett watched from his porch, sipping black coffee. Every time he got closer, the bull didn't flinch, didn't snort, didn't charge. It inched closer too, as if it was learning to trust again, as if they both were. Thunder grumbled like a warning across the hills as Garrett Blake zipped up his coat with trembling fingers. The storm had arrived hard and fast, black clouds rolling low, sky bruised purple and gray. Wind howled through the gaps in the old barn, rattling sheet metal and tugging at the loose shingles like invisible hands trying to tear the place down. Garrett didn't hesitate. He stepped out into the gale, shoulders hunched against the rain now spitting from the sky, and limped toward the back of the barn. There, beneath a pile of tarp and broken fencing, lay a pair of bolt cutters, long forgotten, like everything else on this land. He grunted as he yanked them free, their metal teeth rusted but intact. He slipped them beneath his coat like a secret and turned toward the pen. His breath came short and tight in the wind, the storm's chill biting through to the bone. But he didn't slow down. Not tonight. In the distance, a dull orange glow lit the horizon. Smoke. It rose fast behind the trees near the ridge, billowing, dirty, rising like a curse. The old silo. It had been empty for years, dry and brittle from disuse. Someone must have lit it for fun. Kids, maybe. Or vandals. Whoever it was, they didn't think it would catch. But the grass was dead, the air was dry, and now the fire was moving, straight toward the field. Garrett's limp became a shuffle. His lungs burned. His cane stabbed the ground harder with every step. By the time he reached the fence, the heat had arrived, low and crawling like a predator. The bull was frantic. It bucked hard against the chain, hooves slamming into the dirt, eyes wild with smoke and fear. Foam gathered at its mouth. It didn't roar. It groaned, deep and guttural, a sound from some ancient pain Garrett recognized in his chest. He dropped to one knee, then fell to both, the bolt cutters clanging beside him. "Easy, boy," he coughed, eyes watering. "I'm here." Flames crackled in the trees just behind the pasture. Cinders rode the wind, floating like burning snowflakes. Garrett felt the heat clawing up his back. His shirt clung to his skin, but all he looked at was the chain. He grabbed the lock. Rust flaked off in his hand. He set the cutters and squeezed, once, twice, his arms shaking with effort. The bolt wouldn't snap. He growled, adjusted, grunted louder this time. The bull slammed its body against the fence post. Wood cracked. The chain clanked violently as the beast twisted. But it didn't run. It didn't leave. It was waiting. Smoke wrapped around them like a noose. Garrett's vision blurred. His fingers slipped on the cutters. The metal was slick with sweat. "Come on," he rasped. "Come on, damn you!" One final squeeze. The lock split. He fell backward, coughing violently, chest tight like it was clamped in a vise. The bull reared up, roaring now, and with a single kick, shattered the top rail of the pen. Then, it didn't bolt. It turned, stood over Garrett like a guard. The wind shifted. Sparks blew sideways. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, closer. Red lights flashed through the smoke. Sheriff Donnelly's cruiser skidded to a halt near the fence, tires kicking gravel. The door flew open. Donnelly stepped out, shotgun raised, eyes wide with panic. "Garrett!" he shouted, moving toward the wrecked pen. "Get away from it!" The bull stood tall, chest heaving, muscles twitching. But still, it didn't move. Garrett rolled to his elbow, coughing blood now. It speckled the dirt like paint. He tried to rise, couldn't. Donnelly aimed his weapon. "I said back away! That thing'll kill you!" Garrett didn't blink, didn't even look at the gun. Instead, he turned his face up to the sheriff, eyes red, smoke swirling around him like a war ghost. "He's not the one who needs to be caged anymore," he said, voice broken but clear. The wind roared. For a second, everything stilled. The fire held just beyond the fence line. The bull remained motionless, towering over Garrett like a silent sentinel. Donnelly hesitated, finger twitching near the trigger. But something in the scene stopped him. Maybe it was the bull's calm. Maybe it was Garrett's eyes. Maybe it was something deeper, like the land itself was tired of punishment. Donnelly lowered the weapon. Firefighters pulled up behind him, already moving to douse the flames. And Garrett? He lay back against the mud, rain now mixing with ash, and let his eyes close. Not out of weakness, but out of something like peace. Smoke still hung in the trees the next morning like a memory that refused to fade. Charcoal black streaks ran across the hills where the fire had scorched through the underbrush, stopping just short of the fence line. Ash drifted down like gray snow. The scent of wet soot clung to everything. But the bull stood there, untethered. No chain, no fence, no reason to stay. And yet, it waited. Garrett sat slumped on the back of a hay trailer, a wool blanket draped over his shoulders, his breath shallow but steady. A paramedic had checked him out. Low blood pressure, minor smoke inhalation, bruised ribs. But he'd refused the hospital. He said, "There's still something I need to finish." Sheriff Donnelly stood a few feet away, hands on his hips, watching the animal as if it had become something mythical overnight. "It should have run," he muttered. "Should have disappeared into the hills. But it didn't." "No," Garrett rasped, his voice sandpaper dry. "It was never running." The two men looked at the bull. It stood still, its head slightly bowed, one cracked horn gleaming faintly under the rising sun. Garrett grabbed his cane and slowly eased himself off the trailer. His legs trembled, his breath caught. But he didn't stop. The bull snorted once, deep and low. Then it did something that made both men freeze. It took a step, toward Garrett, and nudged him. Not hard, not aggressive, just a push, a gesture, toward the backfield, toward that gate. Donnelly furrowed his brow. You sure about this? Garrett's voice came back quiet, but firm. Number. But I think he is. They walked together side by side through the hushed morning, past the scorched fence, past the silent barn, past the pasture's edge where weeds grew tall and tangled like time itself had tried to cover what was buried there. And then they saw it, the rodeo arena, or what was left of it. The bleachers were crooked and sun-bleached. The announcer's booth had a hole in the roof. Wild grass had broken through the dirt track. The wooden sign that once read Dry Hollow Arena, Home of Champions, hung crooked by a single nail. And in the center of it all, at the far end of the paddock, was the gate. It was still closed, still chained. A heavy iron loop locked it shut. No one had touched it since the day Wade Blake died inside. A bull had thrown him off mid-ride. The gate jammed. Help came too late. Garrett hadn't returned to the arena since. Not once. Until now. He reached the gate. The bull stood beside him, silent. Garrett stared at the rusted lock. His hand trembled as he reached up. The iron was cold, rough. For a moment he couldn't breathe. But then he whispered, I thought if I kept this shut, it would all stay locked inside. He looked at the bull. You've been waiting for me to open it, haven't you? The bull didn't answer, but its presence was enough. Garrett drew in a shaky breath, then another, and slowly he undid the chain. It clanked to the ground with a finality that echoed in the silence. The wind, which had been blowing just moments before, suddenly stopped. Birdsong paused. The air itself felt still. Garrett stepped back. The bull lowered its massive head and walked through, past the gate, into the arena. No rope, no rider, no noise. It walked straight to the center, then turned and lay down. Garrett watched, his heart thudding in his chest, and in that moment, the silence cracked open inside him. He saw Wade again, not as a broken body in a coffin, but as a boy, wild and laughing, climbing over that same fence, boots too big, rope in hand, fearless. Garrett sank to one knee. The cane slipped from his fingers. I wasn't angry at you, he whispered, voice breaking. I was angry at myself, for letting you ride, for not being there when it mattered. His chest hitched, his hands covered his face. I locked this gate to punish the world, but I've only punished myself. Tears slipped down his weathered cheeks. He didn't wipe them. Behind him, the sun broke through the clouds. A beam of gold cut across the field and settled on the bull, lying calm in the center of the ring, as if it had been there all along, waiting. Garrett stood slowly. No cane, just his own shaky legs. He stepped through the open gate, into the arena. He stood beside the bull, and for the first time in years, he breathed without guilt.